Okay. All right, so we'll call this meeting to order. Note that all council members are in attendance. That's a positive. Drew Larkin has just arrived. Should be late. All right, so if you take a look at the work session, we have the CAFR and the projects. These are also, if you've noticed, the same items that are in the regular session. I thought maybe in terms of efficiency, we could just take those up in the regular session and have all that discussion in the regular session and move to a motion rather than going through it again and then going through it again. Is everybody okay with that? Doing it one time instead of two. Same number of questions, same parameters, no difference. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So then we'll move into the regular session with the roll, still everybody still being here. And we'll move to the Visitors and Citizen Forum. Leslie, do we have anybody wishing to speak on an item that's not on the agenda?
Not received any messages to speak, no.
All right, and for those people who are wishing to speak on an agenda item, I will call on you when we get to that point in the agenda so that you'll have the opportunity to speak. All right, reports and announcements then. Updates from the City Council. Chad?
It's one of those months where I'm trying to just piece it all together on what has happened since the last time. It's been a little crazy. So not much to report back, just getting things back into the gear of things and getting things moving forward again.
All right. Gary?
Just like to say thanks to the staff for the extra workshops on the CIP projects. Got a lot of good information out of it, and it helped me a lot to make some decisions, I suppose. So thanks to the staff.
Linda?
I just wanted to mention that if anyone is on this senior or disabled water rates, they may want to double check that through the transferring of billing companies to Arlington now. There evidently had been some that was dropped. And I know there's an application process now in place. And if, you know, again, if you're one of those accounts, just double check your account and contact city staff, and they can direct you on the procedure for that.
All right, Josh.
I just want to also thank city staff for their hard work on getting us informed and getting us prepared to submit all this. Other than that, I met with our facility maintenance rep at the senior center to kind of see if there's any kind of improvements we could do to it to get it up to ADA compliant. What kind of upgrades we need to do prior to getting them seniors back in there, because it's long past due. And other than that, that's pretty much it.
All right, well, we'll ask when we get to the city manager updates, we'll see where we're at on that. Updates for me, attended some meetings on the county bond package. I know that, for example, the railroad companies are really big on above grade crossings right now. And I think that we probably could gain some of their support on our bridge project. That's important. Also, a recent fire at a cement plant has put a shortage in cement, and therefore we may see some shortages slow down some road projects in the area. Other than that, nothing. So that brings us over to updates from the city manager. George, can you address Josh's issue?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. We're in the process of trying to refresh some old bids that we had taken for doing some repair work and remodeling of the restrooms in the senior center. We're actually expanding that because there are some other improvements that need to be made to that building as well while it's vacant. And so we're trying to refresh those bids, get a better bid for all of the work that needs to be done, or most of it, so we can get that under construction and in progress just as quickly as we can. I'm not sure how long it will take to do it, but this is the time we need to be getting the work done so that when we're ready to open the center back up, it'll be ready in a much refreshed and better condition than it is now. So hopefully we'll be able to award a bid on that as quickly as possible. And we have the funds identified to do that with. So,
George, what all are off the top of your head? What are some of the things included?
Well, I don't have the list in front of me, Mayor, but in addition to the restroom remodeling, we're also looking at ceiling tiles, new ceiling tiles. We're looking at new and repaired windows and doors, both of which need to be replaced. We're looking at the floors, but we're trying to get another evaluation of whether or not we need to have tile replaced on the floor as well. And we'll make that decision as soon as we know and have some price estimates for the work to be done. But hopefully, and there are some other things that we need an inspection on the roof, but we had a roof replacement on that building not too long ago, so I don't anticipate any major repairs to the roof. But probably some additional trim work in various areas. So we just like to get it all done at the same time, if possible.
Any questions of the council on that update from the city manager? No. All right, financial reports, City Lakita.
Mayor, I don't have any particular highlights on those.
All right, any questions for Lakita off the top of anybody's head? No. All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda, these items have been appeared on previous agendas, require little or no deliberation and considered routine or ministerial task. If discussion is required, we may be removed for separate consideration. Any questions about the consent agenda? Does anybody want anything removed, or is there any correction that needs to be made? If not, I'll accept the motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make
I
a
move we
motion.
accept the, I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda.
All right, do I have a second? Second from Josh. Okay, Leslie, would you call the vote?
Josh Altum,
Yay.
Gary Mitchell,
Yes.
Linda Rhodes,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Wandell.
Affirmative.
All right, motion passed unanimously. That brings us up to items for individual consideration. Of course, here's the big one. That's going to take us a while. Consider acceptance of the independent auditor's report, the comprehensive annual financial report, the CAFR fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. I think Lakita at first here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item tonight is basically just to give you the outcome of our financial audit for fiscal year 20. We are proud to announce that we did have it complete in a timely manner this time due to staffing and having staff in place, and the auditor currently now they've been with us for 3 years. So they've got a little bit used to our processes and everything. So we are really pleased to bring to you a very positive outcome tonight because if you look at your council report, you'll see that our general fund balance has improved significantly. I'll circle around to that in a minute, but first I want to lay out that the auditors began their work back in the December timeframe, coming in and examining our financial records, making sure that everything was according to our policies, and ended up with a very successful outcome. As you can remember, last year we had 2 audit findings that revolved around end of year closing processes, as well as segregation of duties. And we also were able to remove those findings this year as well. So we had 0 findings this year, and we were able to remove the 2 from last year. So very successful outcome. Now I'm going to circle back around because I do want to talk to you a little bit more in depth about our general fund balance. As you can see from your council report, our amended fund balance for the general fund was $940,257. Okay. And we know that that outcome had us below our fund balance requirement according to our policy, quite a bit below that. Actually, that was going to actually put us at 12% of our fund balance, whereas our policy calls for between 15 and 25%. As of the end of the year, our audited fund balance is actually 2.4 million. So we were able to not only not end in a deficit, but also to grow the fund balance pretty significantly. But I want to point out to you why we were able to do that. There were some anomalies that happened within fiscal year 20, because we know we had some unexpected items like COVID and the funding that we got from the county. As you can remember, we received over $400,000 from the county. Well, when we use that to mitigate COVID items, we also in turn reduced our general fund balance. So what we did was we opened a COVID fund, kind of an emergency fund or a disaster recovery fund, what you would call it. And what that fund did, it picked up items from that the general fund normally would have covered. So we've discussed this several times within the fiscal year, but we had about $300,000 that we were able to save from the general fund because we were able to charge it to CARES money. So the majority of that would have been housed in police and fire. So if you look at salaries from prior year and fiscal year 20, you will see police and fire salaries decreased. Now, it wasn't because of, staffing or anything like that. Of course, we had our normal vacancies like we normally do. We can't control those, right? But about at least 200,000 of that reduction was due to COVID relief. And so that did assist us a whole lot with this 1.5 million that we were able to grow our general fund balance by. The other item that we noticed a significant increase was our sales tax. So when COVID came and kind of spin the whole economy around, we really didn't have an idea of what it was going to do for our sales tax. So we were kind of scrambling, looking around to see what other sister cities were doing, taking advice from TML, looking at our own trends. And we decided that we wanted to reduce the expected revenues because we had no idea how it was going to affect our businesses and how it was going to affect our citizens and their jobs and things like that. So at that time, we reduced our sales tax. But what ended up happening was we had a higher than normal sales tax response over the summer. So after we did our budget amendment in June, July, August sales tax were higher than they've ever been here in our city. So the effect was opposite of what we kind of thought it was going to be when we went in to do our budget amendment. And of course, when we're going in to do those budget amendments, we're trying to be as conservative as possible because the whole idea is to have a better revenue outcome and have that higher than your actual expenditures. So according to your report, sales tax was up more than $300,000 more than what we expected. So those were two of the things that caused a very high jump with our general fund balance. Another was our property tax. So when we budget for property tax, we generally use a general formula that gives us the amount of taxes that we are going to be able to receive based on our tax rate. And what happened during the year was we received more. We had some delinquent tax to come in, some back taxes to come in that folks were getting caught up on and things like that. That was another thing that we just couldn't imagine that would have happened during, such a strange year in 2020. So those are really the three items. If you look at your financial reports along with the audit, that kind of bumped us way up with our fund balance. Now, this is a great thing because as you know, for the past couple of years, we've been trying to figure out how to get in a better footing with rating agencies and how to get our fund balance up to policy after the property tax was lower back in 2018. So we've had a rough couple of years. We know that we were approached by S&P in 2019 about trying to do something about our fund balance. We were actually told we needed to do something to turn it around. We've made great sacrifices by not not getting salary increases and not implementing our step plans and things like that. So you guys you're well aware of, the sacrifices that the city has made in trying to restore that. So I think it's great that we are in a position now to have it restored. So essentially at the end of this audit, our general fund balance, we're looking more at like 35%, somewhere between 32 and 35% of general fund balance, which is a very positive thing. Now this evening we have Danny Martinez, and I see Linda is here as well. Danny is actually here to walk you through the financials, to kind of give you a little bit more detail about how the audit went and to see if the council has any questions. So, and if you want to, at the end, I can answer questions, or Danny and I can kind of, answer your questions as you have them. But if you don't have anything for me right now, I'd like to let Danny get started and share his screen with, to actually do the presentation.
All right, let me do that right now. Slideshow. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening. Thank you for having BKD as your auditor. My name is Danny Martinez. I'm a managing director with BKD, and I have Linda with me as well, who was the manager on the job. So for here, the next 7 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through the results of this year's audit. And so when you're thinking about this year's audit, it is from the time period of 10/1/19 to 9/30/20. Easy way to think about it is half of the year pre-COVID, half of the year post-COVID. Heard you all talking at the beginning. I'm not sure if you know, but today is actually the 1-year anniversary of the 15 days to slow the spread. So kind of showing how far we've come since then. So when you're looking at the financial results, just keep in mind that it's a moment in time that's about six months ago, but it's still important nonetheless to see how it goes. In the agenda, we're going to hit these 5 topics here in our limited time together. Cut to the chase, the audit results. As Lakita shared, things went really well this year. Our financial statement opinion, we're giving an unmodified opinion. That means we're giving reasonable assurance that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. So that's the best opinion that we can give on your financial statements. In addition, we file a report that's called the Internal Controls Over Financial Reporting, and there's no findings reported. So as she touched on, the 2 items that you all had last year that we identified through audit procedures that were resolved this year. A couple other things to point out: this is issued a month earlier than last year. And this was all done remotely, because of COVID. And if you all remember, we had a blizzard about 3 weeks ago when we were trying to get this thing out. So Lakita, Debbie, and the team did a really great job of helping us get to this point here a month earlier. Some of the things that we do in the audit, so areas of audit emphasis. Okay, well, what did you do? You said you gave us an unmodified opinion. What did you do? Well, we gained an understanding of all your controls. We confirmed your material balances, both of cash investments and as well on the liability side on your debt. Revenue expense fluctuation. This was, we expected it to be a little bit more of an abnormal year, right? It's not city operations as usual by any stretch. So we looked at the revenue and expense fluctuations from year to year based off of COVID, and I'll share a little bit of the results of that. Required communications. This is just what I have to tell you all in accordance with auditing standards. On the left, you can see what we're communicating to you all. On the right is our response. There's some balances in these financials that are estimates. So we listed out what they are on the right. The quality of accounting principles, you can find those in note 1 of your financial statements. There's no alternative accounting or anything weird you're doing outside of any other city in Texas. Financial statement disclosures, some that you may want to pay attention to: your capital asset disclosure, your pension and OPEB plans. And then from here on, I like to refer to this as like the no or none section. As long as you see no or none on the right-hand side, that means things went well. There's no questions about the quality of the client's accounting policies, no disagreements in management, no significant issues that we ran into or disagreements. So always nice to see that none there on the right-hand column. Findings. So did we identify any findings in the result of our audit? And you can see here, none identified, none in any of the 4 levels of finding. Not to say that control deficiencies or issues didn't exist, but we're saying through our audit procedures, we felt we felt comfortable that the controls were in place throughout your significant transaction cycles. Financial statement trends. Again, this is probably something where your monthly presentations by Lakita are going to be more beneficial, but just to show you all, kind of reiterate what she told you all, your government-wide revenue about 15.2 million during this year, which is actually $1 million more than the prior year, I believe. Yep, $1 million more than the prior year, mostly due to taxes. And so what happened this year is that property taxes actually went up. And then your second driver, sales tax, actually stayed pretty flat. And a lot of people, and that's consistent across Texas, a lot of people were expecting the sales tax portion to decrease, but it really, because of those summer months, kind of stayed flat year to year. Your government-wide expenses, your expenses stayed relatively similar, went 13.7 million to 13.8 million. There you can see public safety, your largest at 36%, with water and wastewater, your second biggest expense at 30. And that includes the cost of sales for that. Your pension, this was a good year of results for the Texas Municipal Retirement System. And the reason it went down from a liability of 5.3 million to 1.3 is because investment results were better for the period measured than was expected. And that's really a big driver of what the liability is. So I say don't get too hung up on this year to year, because a lot of this is just guesses based off of how the market's going to perform and the investments that they invest in. Here's the slide that Lakita was talking about with your general fund balance, but to her point, 400,000 of that is like a one-time recovery of funds because of the CARES Act. In addition, you had more work on your street projects, which was not unassigned, but the other type of fund balance that kind of helps out with that. Here's the picture of your sales tax. You can see flat from 19 to 20, which is better than was expected. To close out, the new standards that are coming out, we have 2 accounting standards, just to let you know that here at BKD, we're taking care of it. We'll be able to help you all out as you work through and implementing these standards. Lastly, I want to point out the American Rescue Plan Act, I guess we're calling it ARPA, was passed, as I'm sure you're aware, which is going to bring more money to you all, most likely than what you all received from the CARES Act. So something to be keeping an eye on. We will have a webinar on that middle to end of April once we know more of the details behind the act, and that we encourage Lakita and Debbie to attend. It's a free webinar that we put on for our clients. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to see if you all have any questions, and just reiterate the appreciation for Lakita and Debbie and the team to working remotely, working through the storm that we experienced, and getting this done with better results and a month earlier. Thank you all. You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, you're on mute.
I knew that. Do we have any comments or questions from the public, Leslie?
I have not received any, no.
Okay, then I'll go to the council. And we'll go around and ask the council if they have any questions for our auditors or from Lakita, and we'll start off with our Mayor Pro Tem Chap Wandell.
I just want to say great job to everyone. You guys pulled up the bootstraps. You got to work. You found ways to save us money. You found ways to reduce our liabilities, to put stuff back in. If there was a way you were going to put $1 back in the account, you found it. And thank you, Lakita, for also thinking conservatively on those numbers, so that we were planning for the worst and hoping for the best, and we got much better than we expected. And that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And so thank you very much for all the hard work you put into this.
All right.
Thank you, Chad.
Gary.
Oh, I would like to say that I read this whole thing and understand every piece of it, but that would make me some type of a magician, I believe. So George and I had a little conversation about it today, and he kind of reassured me about some things. And after that presentation, that helped a lot too. there were a few things that arose that maybe this is just for George or Lakita, maybe, I'm not sure, but well, I had so many questions.
Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, probably.
I'll come back to you.
That might be a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
Josh, questions?
Say me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first, it's exciting news, and I'm, very thankful for all their hard work. Like Chad said, this is the purpose of it, and we did extremely better than we anticipated. So I thank everybody's hard work for that. Like I said, it's good news. So with that, I actually propose to make a motion.
Hold off your motion until we get through the discussion that I'll call for your motion.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, okay, but any questions?
I don't have any questions. I went through it, and it's exciting and just what the city needs. It's good news. We've been needing some good news for a while, and I think it's going to really do good for us.
All right, that brings me back to Linda. Then I'll go to Gary.
Yes, I echo what Chad and Josh have just said. Many thanks to Lakita and her team. It looks really good, and appreciate your hard work in getting it to us in March. But I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Going back to you, Gary.
Okay, I lost my place on the question, but I kind of remember what it was. It showed between 2019 and 2020 that the property value decrease was like $28 million, $28.5 million. And so I looked it over, and it showed that the residential was up, and it showed that I believe it was commercial that was down. How do we determine what happened there? Did we lose commercial business, or what happened? Any ideas? Or was it just the value decreased that year between 2019 and 2020? I don't know what page that was on now. Let's see if I can find it. 73, I think. That's just a question. The audit.
Of the CAFR document, Gary?
Yes.
Which page was it?
Well, I'm trying to find it. I got too many markings here. Here it is, page 67. Under the estimated actual taxable value, the last 2 years, 19 and 20, it went from 690 million down to 662 million. And then when I looked over, when you look it all over, it says residential property, it actually went up. And then commercial property, it went from 155 million down to 111 million. How do we justify that? What do you think took place for those property values? Was that just the county that lowered the values on commercial property, or any ideas? Like industrial.
I don't think I would be able to tell you exactly. I would probably have to go back to the tax office to have them to give me some more in-depth reporting, because these were just actually numbers that came straight from the tax roll when we received them. So I didn't have a lot of detail.
That's what I figured, but I was just wondering if there was something that we needed to look at just to see why those values went down so much, because I know my property value didn't go down. So what happened there? It was just a thought, you know what I'm saying? Just concern.
Hey, Gary, if you look at the column next to where it says industrial property, there's one that says less tax exempt property.
Yeah.
There's a big jump in tax exempt property. So whether that's church property or other entities that have bought up property in town, that could be part of it. Like if
that's almost
some of our land or something.
Yeah, that's 40 something million. I saw that, and I was wondering if maybe possibly that had something to do with it.
Because that number went from 11 million to 57 million. That's about the difference between those two numbers too. So it might have something to do with that.
Could
Well,
have.
Can you follow up on that question and send out a report to the council about why that was?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
That's it. Other than that, great job. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So when we look at the fund balance and you don't get COVID money or CARES money next year, Lakita, that 200,000, which helps a little bit on the fund balance, what's going to be the impact on that on the fund balance, since we're going to have to take up that salary that we didn't take up this year?
Well, I mean, of course, we won't, you know, we did get another CARES, well, a similar package to the CARES package. I'm not sure what the impact that's going to have on the city just yet. But of course, we don't ever budget around anything like that. And we don't want to budget around anything like that. So, you know, next year we'll be back to our basics. We'll be back to looking at what are our regular trends with sales tax? What are our regular trends with property tax? We're hoping for more than a 6% jump for property tax values, like we've been getting in previous years, but there's no guarantee there. So anywhere between 3% to 6% is probably what we'll more safely bet on for property tax. So we'll be basically back to our regular projections, but that's not to negate the fact that this year's anomalies really did help us out and get us to the next level, to where we probably won't have to worry about budgeting at a deficit again, even if we do decide to restore some of those things that we've been sacrificing, such as like the step plans and salary increases and things like that. Even if it's just a cost of living increase, we can better supplement that. We can better handle that moving forward, so we can better retain our employees and things like that. We won't need these one-up type of things to get us out of a tight pinch.
Mayor, if I could, one way to look at that, and Lakita is saying that, I think, is that we obviously don't want to rely on those anomalies as being there next year, because they were anomalies this year. But in fact, it helped us recover that fund balance probably 2 years earlier than we would have. And now we have an opportunity to move forward without that very low fund balance and the staring us in the face. So,
And Lakita, I guess my next question is that this will strengthen our bond position as well.
Yes, because I mean, we were also disappointed to be put on a negative outlook back in 2019. I mean, that was something that nobody wants to face. And we actually were put on a negative outlook. And we were told that, you know, when they come back in 18 months or the next 24 months, we were probably going to be downgraded if we didn't do something about our fund balance. So, you know, what a great thing for them to now be able to come back and S&P to look at us and say, well, hey, you know, not only did they grow it back, but they're back within their policy. So I think we can take them off a negative outlook. So I'm really excited about that. If we keep going the way that we're going and don't do anything, you know, in the other direction, we should be taking off a negative outlook pretty soon.
Will that be an impact then on savings if we go out with the COs that we have to do the street and water projects? That'll be a savings on us if we don't get downgraded.
Yes, absolutely. Better credit means better interest rates.
And then my other question, and I know this is confidential information, but I do know that the comptroller does list for us the top sales tax recipients in the county. It's an eyes only for council and staff. Is it possible that at some point, George or Lakita, that we can get somewhat of a confidential summary of that would help us understand the large increase in sales taxes? Was that because people were going out to eat at drive-through restaurants? Was it because we had a large increase on Amazon and online sales? To get a general understanding of why that huge of an increase.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Mayor, because I know you can request that. I believe it's at least once a year, and I don't think I've requested one since I've been in Kennedale. So we can't talk about it in a public meeting or anything, but yeah, that's something that we can request from the comptroller.
And it can't be shared with anybody because it's confidential data of the business.
Correct.
So I guess my next question is going back to, you know, I certainly thank the staff for their work, and don't forget, we had to thank our council who spent long hours last August debating this and trying to make the tough decisions and made the tough decisions. And of course, we had promised step raises. George, with the outlook looking this good, what would be the impact of trying to get those step raises and across the board raises with our fund balance?
well, I know that, Mayor, it's a good question, and Mr. Alton had asked that question as well. And we have taken a look at that, and clearly, I think the phenomenal performance of the budget for 2020 is clearly indicative of the fact that if the council wanted to, we clearly have the funding that will roll forward into the current year's budget, that we could reinstate those compensation adjustments, both the step plans in public safety and the increases for civilian employees without any reason not to do that. If it's, and again, I've said to council before, not being able to fund the plans that you put in place 2 years earlier than that was very unfortunate. And the plan itself needs to be upgraded, but the first step toward that would be using some of these funds, and it'd be a small portion of the funds that Lakita has just described to you. But we certainly would have the ability to implement those adjustments if council wanted to do that.
And would that be retroactive to the beginning of the year so that we would catch them back up to what we planned? Or are we talking April 1st? Or is that something that the council would decide?
Well, I think council could tell us how to do that. My suggestion is, and we've done some calculation to determine how much it would be. It'd be about $132,000. But if we went back to the beginning of the fiscal year and implemented those raises when employees who are still here would have been eligible for them, and the people who would be eligible between now and the end of the fiscal year receive theirs as well. So my suggestion is, if we're going to do it, that we make them effective on each employee's eligibility date, even if that was before April 1st or back to October. And so with civilian employees, non-public safety sworn employees, it would go back to October 1st for that group of employees.
All right. Yeah, so I guess if I can get Lakita, if we can get a explanation of the property value devaluations, as Gary pointed out, and if we could get a list of the sales tax increases from the comptroller, again, confidential, I think that would help all of us understand where that sales tax increase comes from, and maybe helps us plan a little bit better in the future on some of the sales tax policies we could have. Saying that, that's my question. I think Josh had a motion here that's next up. Josh, did you have a motion?
Yeah, I'm glad you guys hit on the salaries and step plans. It was kind of, the motion I was going to propose is to accept the CAFR, and in association with acceptance, provide direction to the city manager regarding implementation of compensation adjustments for city employees that have been withheld pending improvements to the city's financial position and savings that have been identified in the audit report. I therefore make the following motion. I make a motion that the city council accept this very favorable audit report for the fiscal year 2020, and that as a result of the success of the council and staff in meeting the challenges of the past 2 years, direct the city manager to reinstate compensation adjustments for city employees for the current fiscal year, including step increases for eligible sworn public safety employees and a 2% base salary increase for eligible non-public safety employees. This will be effective retroactively to each employee eligibility for the date since October 1st, 2020.
Do I have a second on that?
I know it's a lot to take, yeah.
Any second?
Guess I just have a concern doing both those at the same time.
Well, we can second it, then have the discussion of it, and then of course we still have the vote on it. And then if we have to amend it,
And I'll
we can-
second it.
All right, second. So let's talk on it. Go ahead, Chad.
Well, they totally deserve it, but I personally would like to see some financial projections coming up with the next budget with those numbers involved, because it's not just a one-time expenditure that we're talking about. It's forever and growing. So just making sure that we don't, run off with newfound money and then come back and go, ooh, we forgot we're going to have the bill to follow this up next year too. Just making sure we're in the position that we can do it all the way like that. I just want to be sure.
Lakita?
Yes, I do understand that concern, but Chad, we are very comfortable to be at 33, 35% with our fund balance. And Having done some of the calculations for the public safety steps and the 2% for employees, because as you know, when we implemented the salary increases 2 years ago, those salary increases were old. And so we were still behind at that point, and then to not have one implemented this year. But to answer your question, you know how conservative I am with the city's money, and we are very comfortable at our fund balance right now. What happened this year with 2020 really catapulted us to another level to where we shouldn't have to worry about budgeting at a deficit again, unless, you know, we lowered the tax rate or something like that. But I'm comfortable to say we are very comfortable in our fund balance, and even with salary increases and what Josh's motion, I don't see us having to worry about falling back out of our policy.
George, can you, we had talked about this recently, the problems in the fire department.
Well, I think, and James could speak to this as well, but clearly we're still having recruitment problems. And the bottom line is the step plans that we implemented 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago are still way behind the curve, and our beginning pay for firefighters, paramedics is probably 20% below what the market is for our benchmark cities. And so, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the plan itself needs to be upgraded. Even if we get the employees in the steps they should be in according to the plan that's in place, the whole plan needs to be upgraded. But that addresses Chad's question. We're not talking about the cost of it of improving the plan itself at this point, only getting people into the steps they need and trying to get civilian employees up to some semblance of 80% or so of that market, as we were trying to do 2.5 years ago, under a plan that's 2.5 years old. So we still need to address the other issue that will be discussed much more thoroughly during the budget coming up.
So Chief Brown, so how's turnover been in the fire department?
Well, I've been with the city a little over 2 years, and we have a staff of 18. I'm in the process of trying to hire the 16th person in the last 2 years. So let that kind of weigh in with what I'm saying. A staff of 18, I have hired 16 people in the last 2 years. In the last 2 months, I have had 5 people leave. And so I can go into what we pay. A firefighter paramedics position in the Metroplex area is in great need. And the area that we address is the Metroplex area, because that's our market area, right? So presently we start our firefighter paramedics out at $50,000 a year. The average cost across the Metroplex is about 63 to 65. So I've lost 2 people to Mansfield. Their starting pay is over $65,000 a year. I have lost 1 to Denton more recently. Their starting pay is about 66 plus some other incentives that they bring in. I've lost 1 to McKinney. Their starting pay is about 66 to 67. And then I just recently have one that's leaving and going to Altum City, and they're in the low 60s at their starting pay. So as you can see, from a standpoint of having to replace and just being at the market average, we're real far behind. So I have these young men come in, we train them, we may send them to paramedic school, we may send them to fire school to get them to meet the minimum requirements that most of the departments in the Metroplex require. And they say thank you, and they move on to a department that pays them a considerable amount more. It is a it is a process that we continue to go on and on and on through. And we will up until the point that we can be competitive in the marketplace.
What's our cost to hire someone from no one to firefighter?
Well, first of all, we don't hire from no one to firefighter. So to become a firefighter paramedic, the time frame is about 2 years. But the cost for us to do that, if we were paying them a salary and sending them to EMT school, sending them to paramedic school and then fire school, that's 2 years worth of salary plus the cost of the schools themselves. So it's pretty substantial.
So I've worked with firefighters from David Green to Kelly Turner, now Josh Alton. I've always been told from those firefighters that there's a sense of having consistency means teamwork. And if you have the teamwork of people that have been together for a while, they fight fires better and they save lives better. Is that pretty much true?
They do. The expectations and the knowing of what your partner and or partners are doing in a life-threatening situation. Yeah, it's huge.
And we're not having that because we're having this constant turnover.
That's correct. I've got 3 more that are starting on the 29th, and I'm too short at this present time.
And if we're short, are we spending more money on overtime to cover those shortages, or are we bringing in part-timers from other places?
We do. We did away with bringing in part-timers about a year and a half ago, So yeah, we spend a tremendous amount on overtime. And then there's the training element as well. So when I have a new paramedic that I am training, it requires, instead of 2 people on the ambulance, it actually requires, for the training time frame, it requires 3 people to be on the ambulance. So their minimum requirement to get their training in and to meet with our medical director to be checked off, minimum time is a month. The average is about a month and a half. So we're paying overtime for each one of those particular shifts for a month and a half time frame.
And Chief, you do exit interviews with these firefighters, and if you do, what's the #1 reason that they're leaving?
Danielle, our HR director, she gives them a exit questionnaire, and she can tell you that what we get is we love working here. I enjoy the guys, but I can't turn down the money that I can get somewhere else. Because just remember, the cost difference is long term. If a firefighter comes in and works 25 years and his average cost or increase at another place is $15,000 a year, when you extrapolate that by 25 years on the retirement side, it is a huge, huge difference.
All right, any other questions for the chief or Lakita? Gary, anything?
I got a comment, Mayor.
Oh, yes, Drew.
I didn't catch all of Josh's motion. My computer's acting weird and I had to get out of the meeting and come back in. Are we talking about considering increasing salaries?
Yes.
I don't see that on the agenda. So I don't know that we can do that at this meeting. I mean, the item for consideration is strictly for the audit. Am I missing?
Yeah, I understand what the city attorney is saying. I think Josh's motion was that in association with the impact or the results of the audit, he would like the council to give me some direction to implement these salary adjustments that have been on hold. I suppose that could be a separate item, but I was reading Josh to associate that with the audit report, but mostly I need some direction from the council if you have an interest in doing this.
That's exactly what my motion was just to allow the city manager to look into it and to look at reinstating the compensation to where it should be and all that. So
I think clearly, Mayor, if I did implement those pay raises that were put on hold, that would be reflected when Lakita comes back to you with an amended budget.
Are you okay with that, Drew, that we're asking him to go take a look at that and come back with an amended budget?
An amended budget for approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Yes, Josh?
Oh, I just to say I appreciate Chief Brown and you asking all the good questions because I don't have to do anything. You guys have all the answers, so I appreciate it.
I just have a comment.
Okay.
You know, I know the staff deserves it. They work real hard for what they do, and I understand all the challenges that Chief has expressed because, you know, I worked at small cities and that's always been prevalent. That's why years ago, one of the reasons why I had to leave Kennedale is because of the salary at that time. So I get that, you know, I really do, but I just think this is a little premature to be thrown in at us. There's a lot to be thinking about. I just don't think the time is right this minute. We're on the upswing. All this looks really good on the CAFR. And I don't want anything to jeopardize our potential bond rating because we have these bonds coming up on the CO, and you know, it's just too much in the air right now. I think it's a little premature. Why don't we think about this for October 1? I mean, and especially the retro back. I'm definitely not for retro in it. And the reason why is back in October when council had such a hard time, you know, with the budget, actually it was in August, but with the budget, trying to think of cuts and all, one of the things that we, you know, expressed was salaries. And so all of that was, you know, frozen. And at that time, you know, the tax rate, we had to go up on it for various reasons that was presented to us. So by us, if we retro back anything, how does that look to our taxpayers? Really, because we can't retro back their tax increase that we gave them. You know, if we're on the upswing and we have 30 to 35% in our reserves, that's great and wonderful, but let's slow down a bit. You know, I'm not against a salary increase. I want to make that clear. I just think that right now it's premature, and that's my 2 cents.
Linda, if I could, my only comment to that would be to compare the cost that James is talking about going through with training people as fast as he's losing them, and the $132,000 cost compared to that. And we still have 6 months to go in this fiscal year when we could spend that much money just to try to keep people here. So it's just it's a balancing act, and I understand that. But the question, where do you want to put that? Where do you want to put that money? And
well, definitely not retro, but okay.
And I think that it's important to note that all we're asking here is George to look at it, then come back with Lakita with an amended budget, and then the council can decide yay, nay, or you want to wait until a later date.
Mayor,
yeah.
I just got a little comment about that. I think it's wonderful that, you know, we could increase the salaries for firefighters and police officers and whoever else will be involved in that. But I'm like Linda, I think we wait just a little bit. But here's another thought. Just like I think his name was Mr. Martinez commented that there's going to be some more money come from the government to the city. I would like to see how much that is and what that covers, because I think some of that can probably be used for salaries, right, George? I know the CARES Act was. It would be interesting to see if we can and how that would affect us. Might even bring our bottom line up even better.
well, Gary, it's very possible. And we're still trying to evaluate what that new legislation is going to allow. It's very possible, I suppose, that money, an eligible cost would be to charge police and fire salaries as it was with the CARES money. We don't know that, but as Lakita pointed out, it would not be a normal process for us to assume that as a revenue source to pay for those salary adjustments or salaries, when in fact it's not a recurring revenue.
Right.
And we prefer to provide a sustainable way of maintaining that. And we know that CARES money isn't going to last forever. It's because it's directed at COVID.
But it would be a good way to retroact though. You see what I'm saying? That money, if that was the way we decided to go. That was my thoughts. If the money was available to do that, I'm all for it, but I just think I'm like Linda and maybe Chad too, that we need to probably do a little more discussion on this. We could give him direction if that's okay. If Drew says we could give him direction and let him take that direction to bring it back to us and let us discuss it, that would be awesome. But
And that's what the motion is.
yeah.
And I would also suggest that maybe that if we get money from the CARES Act, it's a one-time fund that's probably better used in terms of doing some capital projects, because then those don't sort of get reused over, because whenever it's salaries, that's something you pay consistently. But if you were to get $1 million, would you want to use that for salaries for a year? And this is a policy question. Or would you use it to fix a water sewer line, a one-time thing that you know you weren't going to have that cost the next time? I mean, it's always complicated. I've seen both sides of this. It makes my head spin. So what we have is a motion on the floor that says that, set the CAFR report, have George look at this, have Lakita bring back a budget amendment, what that cost would be, what is the outlook, do we want to do it then or do we want to do it later? That's what we have on here. So Leslie, would you call the roll?
Josh Altum,
Okay.
Gary Mitchell,
Yes.
yes, Linda Rhodes,
No,
and Mayor Pro Tem Wandell.
Affirmative.
All right, motion passes 3-1. That brings us up to, thank you, everybody. That was a great discussion. I always enjoy those. Consider a resolution identifying supporting capital transportation projects to be submitted by the city of Kennedale, Tarrant County for consideration in the Tarrant County bond package, expected to be presented to the voters by the county, we should point out, at an election in November, certifying the city's participation in such projects at a time of commencement of construction. As you know, I know Gary's new, but Chad, Linda, Josh, you've probably seen the list of construction projects 100 times. We've narrowed these down. We're here to discuss them. If we want to replace any of them, this would be the time that we'll talk about it. But I think we again go back to Larry Hoover just to give us, again, a brief rundown of this. And keep in mind, for those of you in the audience, when it comes to this project, this is just the county transportation project. So this would not include things that we're not talking about erosion projects that will come from a separate fund and will be discussed in the summer. It's not going to include water and wastewater for the most part projects unless they're connected with a street project. So this is just for transportation purposes. Okay, Larry.
Yes, Mayor, the slide here that Lakita has put up on the screen has a little school road extension, Kennedale Sublet Realignment, Colette Sublet Road, and Valley Lane erosion projects. The total being just over $20 million. There was some discussion last week about some other projects. Have not gotten much information from the engineers yet to update this slide to include this in this slide and have a discussion about that. So I'm interested in what the discussion brings forward and ready to get into that.
Well, Larry, I asked you, you'd already done the engineering on Colette Sublet, and if you could break down which part were the roads and which part was the water sewer. You said you had that from the engineers.
I do. I have it here. I don't know if Akita was able to get this on the spreadsheet here, but for Colette Sublet, the water system for that road was 16% of the cost. The sewer line was 11%. And the paving was 57%. And the drainage was 15%.
So water, sewer, and drainage adds up to about 40% of the project.
Yes.
Now, of that water, sewer, and drainage, does the county bond package cover that, or does it just cover the road construction?
I believe it covers all of those items in retrospect to the fact that it supports the paving. If you don't do these items beforehand, a bad water line can ruin your paving that you're approving. So they're favorable on doing utilities as well.
Okay. All right, so questions from the, all right, help me out here, council members. We had a question for Lakita to look up for us as well. Does anybody remember what that question was? Lakita, do you remember?
I'm sorry, Mayor, which question was that?
Yeah, that's my problem. I can't remember what question I asked you last Tuesday. See, we could take a look at if anybody has a remembrance of it, or am I just imagining it? I don't know.
Mayor, I know that you did have a question about that relating to the amount of impact fees that were being collected in Magnolia Hills, and I don't know
Yes.
whether we have that number right now or not.
That was the question.
But obviously, our share of any of these projects, and these numbers on this slide are just estimates. By the time we submit these projects to the county, those numbers could change, but impact fees on any project that's on the impact fee CIP could go toward our portion of the costs.
And can we see a list of all 6 projects, Larry, that was up there? Because Linda had some concern about maybe, maybe substituting if we wanted to. All right, so, well, there's actually 7. And right now we have as the top 4, Little Road Extension, which is the above grade crossing, the realignment, Kendall Sublet and Collette Sublet, and then Valley Lane erosion. And then the other 3 that we did not submit yet is Peggy Lane, New Hope Road, which is, as you can see, fairly expensive at $28 million. And then Trent Street. And then I think Linda also mentioned Oak Crest. So Linda, you had talked about replacing Cannondale Sublet Realignment. Did you have a suggestion on what you'd want to see it replaced with?
Peggy Lane and Trent Street, I don't have a problem with. The New Hope Road obviously would be considerably higher. So I don't guess you could substitute really that for it, but the other 2 could take the place of the Cannondale Sublet Realignment.
Okay, does anybody want to have anybody want to discuss replacing Cannondale Sublet Realignment with the other 2?
Yeah, and
Not
I don't
call
know.
it
Part of
Sublet.
me,
Yeah.
What's
What
that?
was that?
Sorry, not call it Sublet, the Cannondale Sublet.
Yeah, Caleb, sorry, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I know the big thing is the developer said that he would pay for a chunk of it, and he technically is with his 400K that he was over 400K that he's already given us. Has impact, I already know the answer, but has impact fees been collected for the front of those lots as part of that development?
No.
Okay, so there's
For the
still
commercial
future impact fees to be collected from the development of this project.
Chad, if I'm understanding your question, you're asking, has the impact fees been collected for the commercial part on the front of that project? Of that
Correct.
original? And the answer to that is no. This developer doesn't even own that property yet.
No, the
Right,
answer
so-
is simply that whenever they decide to build there, they will pay the impact fees.
Correct. So there are still future funds to be collected of the development of the entirety of this project.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Anytime that property develops, they'd be subject to impact fees.
And I know everybody's kind of up in smoke about getting this guy to pay more money, but let me put it to it this way. We are going to get funds back, period, with future impact fees. If this project gets selected as it stands now, the city basically gets half of this project wiped away. And that's a significant chunk of change. And as far as getting the best bang for our buck, I think that's really the best project to keep there, even though we might have an issue over who we think should and shouldn't pay for things. I think the potential, the positive potentials out of that project outweigh that one issue, because one, it opens up areas for more commercial development, because that's currently TxDOT's big block. And why it won't develop right now is because you can't get a left turn into it. So it completely destroys all southbound traffic from turning into that commercial development. Well, let's say the school decides to sell the land Delaney's on and build a new school project somewhere, and Delaney turns into commercial property. Same problem. So I think this is a situation where we might just bite the bullet and go forward with this, collect the money for future impact fees to reimburse ourselves later, because once you take half this project away, the developer's probably going to pay them pretty close to half of what's left over anyway. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, Gary?
Well, at that meeting, the last meeting that we had, we talked about this project a lot. And I think you even made the comment that there's been an ongoing talk about it for 15 years.
Yes.
And what I got out of the meeting was there was no plan. We didn't really know where it was going to come out. We didn't know what TxDOT would do, even if it did come out where we said it might come out. And so it just seems like a project that's going nowhere to me. But I mean, I could be wrong about everything. I've been wrong before, but it just seems like a project that we don't have a plan for. I mean, go ahead.
Let me get an answer to that. So George, Larry, well, if we approve this project, are we going to be able to create a design that'll meet the parameters and get it funded?
Do we have it now? That would be my question.
We don't have a plan today that TxDOT has blessed, but the intent would be not to get anywhere near the construction or the design of this within this 5-year window of the county's bond program without that question having been answered, the design done, and TxDOT having blessed it as being a workable plan. We haven't designed the project yet, and we're still working with TxDOT to try to determine the best alignment that they can accept. But we think that, I mean, that's going to happen whether we have this on the county bond program or not. We're going to have to develop a program clearly that we wouldn't try to fund a project unless we knew TxDOT was agreeable to it. It wouldn't solve our problem.
I'm going to follow up on Gary's question. Do you think, you and Larry think that we'll be able to create that intersection that we need?
Yes. I don't have the answer or diagram I can show you today because we've got several options that we're looking at, but we don't have one, but we will. We don't have much choice but to find a solution to this problem.
Okay, Gary, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go continue.
No, you pretty much summed it up. I just think that I never heard anything direct from anybody, Larry, even from George. I mean, he said, we will find a solution, but I would think that we would need to have somewhat of a solution now, a thought, a plan, something in place before we would submit this. But I mean, there's some other critical on the critical list. There's some stuff that needs to be addressed like today, right now, supposedly. But on that one, I'm just not sold on. But that's just me, you know.
Okay.
Mayor, just one additional comment. I know there are 7 projects listed here. Linda mentioned Peggy and Trent. Part of what we're trying to do here is submit projects for county funding that will fit the county's criteria. And on the projects of Little Road Extension and Kennedale Sublet Road realignment, those are very expensive projects. That realignment's probably going to be more than that $4.5 million that's there. And I don't know when we'll have another opportunity to at least get some other entity to consider funding 50% of the share of such large projects. So and on Peggy Lane and Trent, as an example, they might not, even if we put them on the list, and we could do it without taking anything else off, but if we put them on there, they're probably not going to serve the kind of population and contribute to the internet or to the interconnection of the transportation plan that would rate high enough to get the county's approval. So I want to make sure I'm getting the message across that these projects are submitted and are recommended to submit to the county because we think they stand a pretty good chance of meeting the county's criteria for the kind of projects they will contribute to in a bond election. If they won't contribute to it, there's no point in submitting it, is my point.
And that's kind of my whole position on why to choose Kennedale Sublet, even though there's a disagreement on who should pay for it. I think dollar for dollar, the city gets the biggest bang for that. And you also look at on the flip side, the county could look at all of our choices and go, not this time, and we get nothing. So we're no worse off than we were. We would still have the problem to get started, but at least in this scenario, we're going to get potentially $3 million to make a problem go away. And I'm okay with that, especially since it relieves our burdens to our taxpayers to pay for this in the future.
Then Josh, your comments?
I got a couple things. One, have we presented TxDOT with anything, and have they suggested anything that we might want to look at?
If I could chime in on that, we actually have had multiple meetings with TxDOT. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We've had multiple meetings with TxDOT when we were trying to get working with the developers on looking at approval for a left turn in. And during that time, we met with Mark Price, but also their planning and engineering group at their main facility in Fort Worth. And we had a whole group of TxDOT engineers. And we discussed with them at that time, and this has probably been a year ago, the concept of realigning Kennedale Sublet as a potential option. And this is just verbal from that group, but it was very highly suggested that we look at doing that as a solution. So although we don't have formal approval, TxDOT has indicated repeatedly that this is something that would provide a solution for the issue.
Mayor, if I could clarify one other thing too. I mean, my understanding of the county's criteria now is that they would pay for 50% of the project's cost, which could include a number of things, including engineering design. But they would only pay for that if that expense was incurred after the bond election was passed. So that if we went out right now and tried to do all the engineering to answer all of these questions and get a design that TxDOT was approving, that part of our cost would not be eligible for reimbursement under the county's bond program because we would have incurred that expense before this project goes to election.
Another question, Josh?
Yeah. So a couple things that have changed since then is, of course, the barber shop's up for sale. I don't know if that's been put into the designing of it. To me, you know, I bring my kids to school every morning and pick them up. And just the way those streets hit the parkway are just, it's dangerous, especially at the light, because you never know who's going to turn left or who's going to turn right. If you put your blinker on, sometimes somebody doesn't put the blinker on. It's almost a head-on collision every time. So it's, to me, it's more of a safety thing, and it needs to be addressed, because when they start doing the 287 820 corridor, we're going to see a massive increase in traffic, and it's going to be a nightmare through there. So I think if we plan ahead and spread those roads out and make it safer, then I think in the long run it'd be better. And of course, what that can bring to the much needed parkway is, I don't know. Another question I had is the erosion issues. There's a couple in here with erosion issues. You said that those would be supported by the Waste and Water Fund. The sewer and water fund?
Probably stormwater drainage.
I mean, stormwater drainage, I'm sorry. So like, it's possible that later on, the one on Pennsylvania and there's another one somewhere.
Talking about Briar Court.
Yeah, so that, it's possible that those could fund that.
Those would not be available for transportation funds with Tarrant County. We could look at those later on for the CO issuance or GEO issuance.
But for the erosion issues, they couldn't be used for that.
No, the Valley Lane erosion is on here because it solely supports the entire roadway of Valley Lane.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about Pennsylvania, and then there was another Winding Creek. Either
Those
way.
could be funded by a CO or a
Okay.
GO later on down the line.
Okay. And this is just out of curiosity, how much has Magnolia Hills and the Hammond Creek, their impact fees brought to the city? Do you know?
I can see those numbers. I don't have them at my fingertips. You know, the total fees I know from Hammond Creek, we got a check for about $600,000 for all of impact fees, permit fees, and so on. Magnolia Hills, I just would have to go back and look. We're currently collecting, I know, from each home that goes in, those impact fees and park dedication fees as well. I want to say that just off the top of my head, they're around $5,000 or $6,000 a home for the impact fees. And there's 92 of them.
So I have mine ranked here. And I have Valley Lane. I think that's pretty crucial, so that road doesn't fall into the creek. Number 2, I have Collet Sublette Road. Number 3, I have Little Road extension from Kennedale Parkway to New Hope. And then I'm really torn on the Kennedale Sublette realignment, because like the city manager said, this is a county funded roads, and I think that they would really look at that as a good project. The other ones, like 3rd Street and Trent Street, I just don't see the county wanting to fund something, but I do think that those are necessary. So for now, it's Valley Lane, Collet Sublette, Little Road. I haven't made a 4th decision, so I don't know if somebody can.
Well, let me throw out a few things here. One is that we won't be ranking them anyway. And my concern about and dealing with the last county bond package, you put Peggy Lane on there, it's not going to be approved. Peggy Lane's a dead-end street. It's not increasing the traffic flow, which is what the county will be looking at. That's not going to happen. Somebody suggested Little School Road and New Hope Road. Well, you're not going to have the money because you're going to have to put that money up in advance before you get refunded. So you're talking now close to $40 million to be able to do both of those. That's not a possibility. Kennedale Sublette realignment has been on the books since 2005 because of a safety issue, just like you said, Josh. And one of the things that we try to do is that leverage our tax dollars, as Chad was saying. What gives us the most? So let's say you put Trent Street on there, and so the county's going to give you $80,000 as opposed to $2.5 million. And that $2.5 million tends to benefit a larger group of people on Kennedale Sublette Road on that safety issue. This is separate from the development because we know for the last 15 years that's been an issue. And I understand Gary's concern is that, okay, we've got to see a plan here. And I did get an email. Somebody asked me, well, why did you abandon the plan about going all the way across from Sublette behind Rob Morse's property? Well, because of the cemetery. And Josh, you pointed out in the last meeting about having to reevaluate and move all bodies and using sonar equipment and how expensive that is. And I'm not sure when I hear well, citizens are against this. When I go and talk to people in my neighborhood or these other neighborhoods, no one knows that we're trying to fix this road. I think if you were to go out and do a polling data, you'd find people saying that road's a problem, especially on school days where it backs up. But our job is to find out what's the best bang of the buck. How many citizens does it benefit at the maximum when we're dealing with a limited budget? And I just don't see, knowing the county and the people that will probably be on that board, that Peggy Lane and Trent Street can be approved and we get anything out of it. It doesn't mean we still can't fix those roads with COs, but these are the roads that we want to try to cut the cost in half. That's the goal. And I think I had a question in the chat. Why don't we combine Trent Street and Valley Lane? I think that was a question that was brought up last time. And I would wish Larry would answer that one more time so we have that clear. Why not combine Valley Lane and Trent Street? So to me, it's about leveraging your dollars, the maximum dollars, to benefit the largest group of people, the safety issues that Josh has mentioned, the fact that it's been sitting on the books for over 15 years, and the chance of being able to get paid half of it may not occur for another 15 years. That's the problem. So tell me, Larry, why not combine Trent Street and Valley Lane?
Well, first off, Trent Street doesn't connect to Valley Lane in this concept. It's basically designing a concrete intersection at the Parkway next to the Village Creek Bridge and connecting it to the existing Trent Street as a second access to the Elk Crest area. The Valley Lane erosion is an erosion project to protect the length of Valley Lane from the bridge at the southern end of the project, and supporting that roadway with a hard cover for erosion control. So those two roads don't actually connect. Those two projects don't connect together to be able to combine those. And they're two different type of projects.
So it's important to know that what the county will look for is what flows traffic better, what eases the traffic flow and protects streets. That's what's one of their major things. And we just had a meeting about that this morning. So I think everybody's had their say. I think I answered the questions that were submitted.
Mr.
So-
Mayor, can I make one more comment? And this might
Yeah,
have
go
been,
ahead.
all right, this might have been better timing at the CAFR, but I noticed on page 9 of the CAFR that currently, and you can look at it a couple of different ways, under governmental activities, under the bond obligations, general bond obligations, certificate bonds obligations. I'm going to go to the last column where it says total, where it says business type, and somebody can explain this to me. So it says, but it relates here. Okay, so it says in 2020 it's 12,600,000. In 19 it was 14 million. So obviously it got paid down. But in 2019 in the budget there was a $6 million CO that went in the budget, and when it's issued, that number is going to go from 12 million to 18 million. Is that correct?
That's going to be a Lakita question, Gary.
Okay, if that's correct, and then when we start adding these other to it, it's going to be a considerable increase on COs in the debt, in the long-term debt activity. So am I right or wrong, Lakita, by looking at it like that?
You mean the 6 million that's budgeted for 2021, correct?
If it gets issued, yes.
Yes, if that gets issued, that's not affected by enterprise funds. That 6 million of COs will be all governmental funds.
Okay.
So it will be all governmental debt. It will not affect the enterprise funds.
But it's still debt, long-term debt. Okay.
Yeah, it will be a 20-year long-term debt. Yep.
And it will not increase the tax rate. Is that correct?
It will not. That is correct. It will not increase the tax rate.
But my point is these other COs that will need to be issued to do these projects. In other words, how are you going to pay for these projects like Kennedale Alignment Road? 4.5 million. How are we gonna pay for that? Because we have to actually pay for that before we get reimbursed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you pay for that? You issue COs, right? So you issue a CO or you take it to the public for a GO for a vote, right?
You could do that,
If
but
decided to, yeah.
I do think, Lakita, correct me if I'm wrong, that even with these projects that we are looking at no tax increase with these projects either. Is that correct?
We are looking at no tax rate increase within the 14 million.
Let me.
Anything outside of the 14 million or anything that the county does not cover, then the next funding source will be on our own local GO.
But Lakita and Gary, let me make sure I understand your question, because the amount of money that's our share of any of these projects that happen to get approved by the county, our share of that isn't necessarily a new debt on top of that $6 million or the $14 million. Some of these projects, I think, call it Sublet Road as an example, is on our list to be funded with that $14 million. If the county approves it on their bond program, that's going to actually free up some of that money for us to use on other projects. It's not an additive. What we incur here as our share isn't necessarily added to the $14 million in debt we can issue, because some of it we have on that list to pay for entirely with those COs. Larry, am I accurate on that?
That is correct.
Yeah, that's correct. The majority of the programs the improvements that were on the original list that had the 14 million COs on it, most of them are the programs that were pulled off of that to put on the county transportation bond program for
So
consideration.
anything the county approves, the voters approve with the county and the county funds, to the extent that the county's paying for it, that's freeing up some of that $14 million for us to expand our own programming and do other projects. Is that
Okay,
okay?
That makes sense, everybody?
Yeah, so you need decisions by tonight, right?
Yeah, we have to have that in. And of course, we don't rank them. We just send them in because they don't want them ranked.
I like to rank them, so.
Oh, okay. Well, you are part of the rank and file.
Makes me feel better.
Just a quick comment and clarification. I'm pretty sure I know the answer. So say we put Kennedale sublet realignment on this, that takes it off the other list, which frees up half that money. So let's just say this is going to cost $5 million. That frees up $2.5 million we can then assign to other projects without raising our tax rate.
If that project actually winds up costing 5 million in our estimates, I'm concerned on that one particularly, that our estimate here is a little bit low, but whatever we have programmed to pay for with COs, if the county pays for half of that project, it's freed up that much money.
So in this scenario, we actually get more bang for our buck because the county is going to pay for some of it. It frees it up, and we get to use that money again for another project, rather than coming back to this big ticket item sitting on a list that will chew up most of our budget.
Correct.
Yes.
All right, so let's just try it this way real quick. Does anybody have an objection to Little School Road extension being on this list?
I'm not for it.
You don't want the road on there?
No, it's just too much. In my opinion, it's just too much right now.
You just said the Little Road extension, that's the bridge.
Little Road extension, yes. $12 million
Okay.
project.
No.
Okay, so all right, since we have an objection to that, let's just take a vote on that one to see if we want to keep that as one of them. And we'll go this to each one of them. Everybody can have that vote. All right, so Leslie, would you call a vote on whether or not we should keep the Little Road extension as one of the four?
Josh Altum,
Yes.
Gary Mitchell,
No.
Linda Rhodes,
That's fine, yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Wendell.
Affirmative.
All right, so 3-1, we'll keep that on there. I'm gonna keep Sublet Lane because that's sort of the top button. We'll hit Valley Lane next. Anybody have an objection to Valley Lane? Not hearing any, I will keep Valley Lane on that list. Call it Sublet. Do I hear any objections to call it Sublet?
No objection, but I'm kind of like Josh. I know that we say that the county doesn't want us really to prioritize, but it's kind of like they say candidates on a ballot. If your name's listed first, that's supposed to be a good thing, opposed to second or third. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I just think that it looks cleaner if we prioritize them, and my priorities were similar to Josh's.
Well, I
Just
will
my
tell you,
two
what they'll
cents.
do is they'll create a rubric and they'll take them all separately, so they won't ever see your priority.
Okay,
But we can certainly, one of the things we can do, Linda, is that in the letter that we send, we could say, these are our top ones. Because I'm supposed to send a letter. And so if I'm hearing something and you want me to put in the letter, hey, this is one of our top things, or one of our major concerns, we can certainly put that in there. And we'll write it in.
Mayor, one of the things you can emphasize is the fact that Colette Sublet's already engineered. It's ready to go.
Right.
So it's something that could be started year one of the bond project, whereas these others still need to be engineered, designed, and proofed up for construction.
Okay.
Which one was that?
Call it Sublet.
Call it, so, okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, so that brings us to Kennedale realignment, since I know we've had lots of discussion on that. So let's just have that vote on whether we want to keep Kennedale Sublet realignment. And I'll say this, if it fails, then we'll try to see if we want to put something else on there or not. So let's go ahead and Leslie, would you just take a roll call vote on whether we should keep Kennedale Sublet realignment?
Josh Altum, Gary Mitchell,
No.
Linda Rhodes, and Mayor Pro Tem Wendell.
Affirmative.
I didn't hear Josh's vote.
believe.
I said yes.
It's split
I
2-2.
To me, it's such a safety issue to me, but
So it's votes a tie. As tiebreaker, I agree with Kennedale Sublet realignment. All right, those would be the three. If you want me to, in the letter, put in a list of what you think is most important, let me know, and we'll work on putting into, when's the letter due, George?
Yeah, I think it gets submitted when we have outlined each project and submitted each project with all the justification. You need to send a letter.
Would you, as council members, send George a letter of what you think are the top projects, and we'll work that out, and then I will put it in the letter that this is the projects that you see as most important.
You talking about prioritizing these
Yeah,
four,
just in the
Mayor?
letter. Will everybody do that for me? I'm hearing nobody.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So send a letter. I will write the letter, and I'll make sure I send out a draft of the letter to all of you to see it before I send it.
Did we need to make a formal motion on this whole thing rather than the individual way we just did it?
Yeah, I guess we do. So if you make the formal motion, I know how this vote's going to go, but we need to make that formal motion.
All right, well, then I move that we submit the Little School Road extension, the Kennedale Sublet realignment, Cullet Sublet Road, and the Valley Lane erosion for our projects to the Tarrant County bond program.
Do I have a second?
a second.
All right, Leslie, would you call the roll?
All right, Josh Altum,
Yes.
okay, Gary Mitchell,
No.
Linda Rhodes,
Unmute.
Linda, did I miss you?
No, sorry. No,
No, and
I was gonna
then
say, no, did we not miss you, or no, no, I was a little confused.
right, both.
Mayor.
I got it, no.
Mayor Pro Tem Wando.
Affirmative.
And I will also vote yes. All right. Next item. Consider adoption of a resolution setting a public hearing date. So we're setting a public hearing date for city council meeting 5:30 Tuesday, April 20th, to consider amendments to land use assumptions, capital improvement plan, annex, associated water, wastewater, and roadway impact fees. So we're setting a public hearing date.
Yes, Mayor, members of City Council, staff's been working with Freeze and Nichols for a little over a year now, and they're ready to present their updates to this plan, and staff recommends approval.
All right. So this is a public hearing, so this should be an easy one. Somebody want to make some motion?
I muted myself.
Okay.
Sorry. I thought it was muted and then I muted myself to talk. But I guess all you need from us is a motion. So I move that we set the public hearing to discuss the amendments to the land use assumptions, capital improvements plans, and associated water, wastewater, and roadway impact fees to be held on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m.
Have a second.
Second.
George, can we make sure that this is pretty complicated stuff, that we can get a preliminary report as early as possible to the council, because it's pretty dense material.
We'll get it to you as soon as we can, yes.
All right, so I have a first and a second. Any further discussion on the public hearing date? No? All right, well then, Leslie, would you call the vote?
Josh Altum. Okay.
Yes.
Gary Mitchell.
Yes.
Linda Rhodes
Yes,
and Mayor Pro Tem Wando.
Affirmative.
All right, next up, consider approval of the low bidder XL4 construction for the Tarrant County Community Development Block Grant, the CDBG, project for rehabilitation of the water lines in the 400 to 600 blocks of 3rd Street. Larry?
Yes, Mayor, during your April 2020 City Council meeting, Resolution 569 committed the city's funding for the CDBG project, which is Community Development Block Grant Program. The estimated funding at that time was $313,512, with the city's matching portion being $133,512, thus leaving the grant that we would be receiving at $180,000. During the design phase, it was found that we did not have 50 feet of right-of-way for the entire length of 3rd Street, thus requiring us to adjust the alignment of the water line. Tarrant County did not want us to pursue acquiring the right-of-way due to time constraints with the federal process of acquiring the right-of-way. So what you have in your bid tabs is 2 options. One, to connect the existing 12-inch asbestos cement line at a distance 273 feet short of North Road, at a cost of $314,000 and $314,008, excuse me. And the alternate, the base bid of removing and properly disposing of the asbestos cement pipe at $409,064. This asbestos pipe is estimated to be over 50 years old, and staff recommends approval of the low bid, the base bid for XL4 construction to complete the entire project using option B at $409,064.
And Larry,
Paid for out of the Water Capital Fund.
Larry, you will keep the old asbestos line in the ground.
What does not have to be removed due to the conflict with the alignment will stay in the ground and be abandoned in place.
Because that's a safety procedure, correct?
That is, and it's very expensive. Yes, it is a safety procedure.
But Larry, there is some portions of that that would be removed, correct?
Yeah, the remaining 273 feet where we don't have the required right-of-way width that would be removed and disposed of properly, which is why we have an increased cost.
Any questions for Larry? As you know, CDBG funds are used in areas. How would you describe the areas that they can be used in, Larry?
That would be low to moderate income.
And that money is available to the city every 2 years through this Community Development Block Grant Program that's administered through the county. And we're only up every 2 years. We'll be up next year.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any motions on?
So just to clarify, we're talking about choosing between option A and option B, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Larry, what would you do?
I would replace as much asbestos line as possible.
So that'd be the option B.
Yes, the 409,000. Yes.
Larry, of that 409,000, how much is coming from the county?
We still get the 180,000, so the city would be responsible for the additional 95,000.
Okay.
Then let's see, where are we? I move that we consider the approval of the low bid from Excel 4 Construction for the Tarrant County Community Development Block Grant Project for the rehabilitation of the water lines in the 400 to 600 blocks of 3rd Street using option B.
I second.
Any further discussion? Leslie, would you call the vote?
Josh Altum
Yes.
and Gary Mitchell,
Yes.
Linda Rhodes,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Wando.
Affirmative.
The motion passes unanimously. All right. Item 5, consider approval of resolution adopting policies and procedures and protocols related to reopening facilities of City Hall during the, as we've been in the COVID pandemic for the last year. George?
Mayor, this is an item that was requested to be on the agenda by council members, and I provide you with a copy of resolution number 583, which would essentially, and with an exhibit attached to that I sent out an amended copy of late this afternoon, but it's essentially the same as the one I sent you yesterday, but it would outline the criteria and the procedure that we would follow to reopen City Hall, all of our city parks, other city facilities to the public beginning next Monday. And if the resolution is acceptable to the council, the exhibit that's attachment A, exhibit A, the only change in the one I sent today was some language that the city attorney added, making it clarifying a couple of issues, particularly with regard to temperature, taking of temperatures upon entry into the city facilities. But other than that, it's the same as the one I sent yesterday, if you didn't get a chance to look at today's copy. And so, Mayor, this is on there for council discussion and or approval of this resolution. If you adopt it, then we would open the city facilities according to Exhibit A, starting next Monday morning.
And that would be the parks as well, although the senior center would stay closed during renovation.
That's correct.
Any questions from the council for George? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
I want to discuss it.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it looks great. Everything looks good except for the last bullet point. The city council and all advisory boards, commissions will continue to meet via video conference. You know, we've used a lot of this CARES Act money to help protect us, like the dividers, the council chambers, the hand sanitizers, the temperature checks. And so I don't know if anybody else agrees, but I'd like to meet in person.
Well, Josh, here's my question that we may have a legal issue here. Maybe Drew can help us. If we have a public hearing and we're in person while we're still under this, and there's somebody who says, I don't want to attend City Hall because I'm afraid of COVID right now because we're still in a pandemic. We lost another 30 people today. How do we address that? Can we, Drew, allow them to still video come in and have their voice heard as sort of a hybrid version.
Yes, legally you can do that. I don't know if you can pull that off IT wise, but legally you can do that.
One of the reasons that last bullet point was added, anticipating that council might want to consider meeting in person, is that there are people still a majority of people who will not have been vaccinated and who would not want to attend every city council meeting in person. And we're trying to research and determine if from a technology standpoint, we can have the council here in person, or some of you, or all of you, and still have people attend the meeting virtually who choose not to attend a public gathering like that. We're not quite there. We might be able to do it by setting up an iPad in the council chambers, but I'm trying to get technical people to advise me. My suggestion is we continue to do it by video unless we can resolve that problem satisfactorily, so everybody still has the chance to attend the meetings.
So if we could resolve the problem by the next meeting, which I think is April 20th, we could meet in person.
If we can resolve that so that the public can hear all of the discussion and the council can see everybody in the public that's speaking to you and can interact with you, and we can meet all of those objectives of a public meeting. Right now, we've not ever done that since we went into this pandemic.
Well, have we reached out to every other city in the DFW area who's doing it? I mean, we're pretty much the only ones that are still closed, so we're doing something right. I mean,
I think we can get there. It's part of it, Josh, is our equipment in the council chambers and whether or not we need to tweak any of our equipment that will allow the public to do that. I think we can do it, but we're not there yet tonight. And so, clearly there are other cities that are not meeting, that are still meeting virtually. So I think we can do it, and we could probably do it by the April meeting. But if you need to be able to interact with the public if they're coming to a public city council meeting or a planning and zoning commission meeting. And some of those will be meeting before the council meets next month. So
should we be setting a goal for the April meeting to try to get that done? I think
is there anybody else that feels the same way I do? I mean,
I do.
I do.
I would prefer to meet in person, but at the same time, I don't want to deny anybody's right to be present and accounted for and heard.
Right, but we should have the technology to do that. I mean,
agreed, but we also don't have an IT department, so we have to wait for our IT contractor to do the work too. So,
and I think it's also important that we can say that other cities have done it, but Linda, I will tell you that other cities are way ahead of us on this, because it's only been about 1.5 years since we started broadcasting our council meetings, whereas other cities, as you well know, have been doing it for 5 to 6 years, 7, 8 years. I mean, even the school district has a more advanced, I don't want to say even the school district, that sounds bad, like I'm picking on them, has a more advanced system than we do. But I think it's a good idea if we can meet in person and get people who can actually tune into the meeting. If you're 80 years old and there's something that concerns you, should you be eliminated from being able to do so? We've got to fix it. In other words, we've got to fix it. And we should have it fixed, I would hope, by the next council meeting.
Well,
but Josh,
I added that bullet because I'm not sure. So I think we can. And if you adopt it and you adopt the resolution and we can be ready to do that, that's what we'll do by the next meeting.
Or Josh, if you want to make a motion that just eliminates that last bullet point, and then we work on it from there, we can certainly do that too.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 583 Exhibit A, the amended copy minus the last bullet point that that says the city council and all advisory boards and commissions will continue to meet via video conferencing in order that any citizen wishing to participate in the meeting can continue to do so, but avoid attending in person.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Is that acceptable, Linda, do you think? And Gary, I know that's acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So Leslie, would you take the vote, please?
Josh Altum,
Yes.
Gary Mitchell,
Yes.
Linda Rhodes,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Wendell.
Affirmative.
Motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to executive session, which means now we've got to put some people into timeout or into the waiting room, whatever you want to call it. Because I think Drew has some things for us, right, Drew?
I do.
All right, so
Mr.
let's,
Mayor?
yeah.
Can we take a quick break?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's take 5 minutes.
Thank you.
So we're coming back out of executive session. All we need now is a motion to adjourn.
I move we
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Ladies first.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Linda. Linda's made the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, Leslie, would you take the roll?
Josh Altum,
Yes.
and Gary Mitchell,
Yes.
Linda Rhodes,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Wendell.
Affirmative.
Hey, thank you, everybody, for your hard work. Thank you for all you do.
Thank
Thank you for the discussion. Very useful, and we'll see you all next time.